My name is Evelyn Tran, 42 years old. I've always been the one who showed up for everyone. Birthdays, emergencies, rent shortfalls. I didn't have much, but what I had, I gave. That's just how I was raised. When family needs you, you don't ask. You just step up. So when my parents asked me to move back in after Dad's heart surgery, I didn't hesitate. I left my small apartment in the city, broke my lease, moved into the guest room I grew up in. That temporary arrangement stretched into 5 years. In those years, I became the quiet backbone of the house. I handled the bills, cooked most nights, helped Mom with the garden when her arthritis flared up, and drove Dad to appointments. Meanwhile, my younger brother Caleb, the so-called golden boy, floated in and out of the house like a visitor. He lived 3 blocks away, but acted like we were on opposite coasts. Caleb always had bigger things going on: promotions, investments, networking trips. When he did show up, it was with loud laughter, a new watch on his wrist, and a string of "you wouldn't believe" stories. And my parents, they lit up around him like porch lights at dusk. I never said anything. I told myself it's just different. They show love differently. He's busy. He'll step up when it matters. That illusion cracked on a random Tuesday morning. I was reviewing our joint bank account, the one Dad set up when I moved back in, just checking to make sure the auto payment for the mortgage went through. That's when I saw 2 large transfers, both labeled Caleb Business Fund. Over $12,000 gone. I stared at the screen for a long time, then reread the transaction dates. 3 weeks ago. I asked Mom about it gently that afternoon. "Oh," she said, waving a hand. Caleb needed some help getting his new thing started. "It's temporary. We trust him." I tried to keep my voice even. "You didn't think to tell me." "It wasn't your concern," she said, smiling as if I was being dramatic. "It's just money." Just money. Money I had saved. Money I had used to patch over their unpaid utilities last winter. Money I thought was part of our shared survival. And it wasn't the first time. When I looked deeper, I found 5 more transfers. Smaller ones. Disguised as maintenance or home improvements. All sent to Caleb. All without a word to me. That night, I sat on the porch alone, my tea gone cold in my hand, listening to Caleb's laugh echo from the living room. They were inside watching a movie. I was outside invisible again. That was the first moment I allowed myself to ask, what am I doing here? I wish I could say I confronted them right away, that I stood up and delivered a righteous monologue. But the truth is, I didn't. I cooked dinner like usual the next day, made Dad's favorite pork stew, washed the dishes afterward, took the trash out, and cried in the laundry room where no one would hear me. Because it wasn't just about the money. It was the silence. The assumption that I wouldn't object, that I didn't need to be consulted. That my work, my presence was so constant, so reliable, it had faded into the wallpaper. They didn't mean to hurt me. That made it worse. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. Caleb threw a backyard party to celebrate the soft launch of his tech consultancy. I wasn't invited. You read that right. It was hosted at our home, and I wasn't invited. I found out when the caterers arrived, when strangers in pastel blazers asked me where to plug in the chafing dishes. I stood there in my gardening gloves covered in dirt, blinking at a man who asked if I was the help. That night I sat in my childhood bedroom while the house pulsed with music and laughter downstairs. No one came up. No one noticed. Not even when I turned off the light. 2 days later, Caleb stopped by my room while I was folding laundry. "Hey, listen," he said. "Sorry if that party thing felt weird. I thought you'd be busy or tired or something." I stared at him. "I live here, Caleb." He chuckled. "Yeah, I know. It's just, it wasn't really your scene, right?" There it was. Not your scene. Not your space. Not your say. He clapped me on the shoulder and left before I could respond. I folded the last towel with shaking hands. The next morning I did something I hadn't done in years. I drove back to my old apartment building, the one I left behind to take care of them. The new tenant, a kind woman in her 30s, let me in to see it. She'd redone the kitchen. The window still had the tiny crack from that summer hailstorm. I stood in the center of that small room and remembered who I was before I moved back home, before I became invisible, before I learned that loyalty, when unreciprocated, can become a kind of quiet erasure. And I knew. Something had to change. I didn't pack a suitcase. Not yet. But I did start pulling my name off things. That week I canceled the auto payment I'd been covering for Dad's medication. I didn't make a scene. I just let it bounce back. When Mom asked about it, I said calmly, I figured Caleb could cover it since he's doing so well. She blinked, unsure if I was joking. I didn't explain. I also removed my card from the shared grocery account. Stopped cleaning dishes I didn't use. stopped folding towels that weren't mine. There was no confrontation, just a slow withdrawal. Like a tide that never came back in. I wasn't trying to punish them. I was trying to remember myself. Because something had shifted inside me that day, I stood in the old apartment, something I couldn't unfeel. It wasn't rage, it was clarity. I'd built my life around being needed. And now I was realizing they only needed the parts of me they didn't have to notice. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The real unraveling began on a rainy Thursday. I was in the home office paying a bill when I noticed an envelope sticking out of the filing cabinet. It was marked Family Trust. 2021 Amendment. The handwriting was Caleb's. Now let me be clear. I wasn't looking to snoop. But that file, the one marked Trust, was supposed to be under Dad's care. It was something we'd all vaguely acknowledged existed. I'd even contributed to some of the repairs it funded roof plumbing car. But I was never part of the decision-making, never invited into those conversations. Still seeing it right there unsealed my name, not on the label it burned. I opened it. What I found wasn't illegal, but it was revealing. The amendment listed Caleb as acting co-trustee alongside Dad. It designated control over any real estate sales. It authorized investment of shared assets at trustee discretion. It also showed that the house I'd been living in, taking care of financially supporting, had been quietly refinanced last year. Under Caleb's name. I froze. Refinanced. Under his name. Meaning if I chose to sell or evict or claim full authority, I had no say. Not legally. Not financially. Not even emotionally. Because it wasn't mine. Not the house. Not the choices. Not the family structure I thought I'd been part of. I set the document down carefully and walked to the kitchen. Mom was stirring soup. She looked up and smiled. "Can you taste this for me?" I did. It was good. I didn't say a word about the papers. That night I lay awake for hours, my mind playing out every scene I'd dismissed before. Caleb offering to handle the paperwork when Dad had his second surgery. Mom mentioning Caleb's business acumen. Dad joking that I'd never want to deal with boring legal stuff. And me nodding along, trusting blindly. Because that's what I did. I trusted. The next day I emailed a lawyer. Erica Molina, a quiet powerhouse I met at a local workshop years ago. She wasn't just smart, she was compassionate and discreet. I sent her a simple message. "Hi Erica, hope you're well. I'm trying to understand some family trust dynamics and could use a consultation. No urgency, but soon would be appreciated." She replied within the hour. We met that weekend at a quiet cafe on the edge of town. I brought copies of everything. She skimmed them quickly. Her voice was calm when she said, "They're not doing anything illegal, but it's not transparent. And if you weren't told, that's a different kind of harm." She paused. "Were you aware your name was never listed as a beneficiary?" I felt the air leave my chest. "What?" She pointed at the second page. "It was removed in the 2021 revision. Caleb and your parents are listed, not you." I stared at her stunned. All these years, all the caregiving, the financial contributions, the emotional labor, and I wasn't even a line in the document. That night I didn't sleep. I didn't cry either. There was something colder in me now, not cruel, just finished. I realized they had drawn their line years ago. I'd just never looked down to see it. And I'd been crossing it daily, believing I was inside a circle that had quietly been erased around me. The next morning I cooked breakfast. Not as a gesture, as a ritual for me. Eggs, toast, black coffee. I set it on the table. No one joined me. Caleb was out. Mom and Dad were still asleep. I sat in the quiet and wrote a list. Not of grievances, of boundaries. I would not be contributing financially anymore. I would not manage their appointments or bills. I would begin looking for a place of my own. I would tell them the truth calmly when the time came. Not for revenge, for liberation. Later that week, Mom asked if I could co-sign something for Caleb, a small business loan, just to smooth things over. She said it casually over dinner, while dabbing the edge of her napkin. I looked at her gently. "No." She blinked. "No, I'm not comfortable with that," I said, "and I think it's time we had a real conversation." She looked confused, hurt. "What's going on?" I took a breath, and for the first time in years, I told her the truth. Not the version she preferred, the smiling helper who never made waves, but the one who had felt used, erased, and slowly uninvited from her own family. Her eyes filled. She didn't argue. She didn't apologize either. She just said, "I didn't know you felt that way." I nodded. "I know." After that conversation with Mom, something shifted. Not in her, not right away, but in the house. The air, the glances, quieter pauses when I entered a room. A little more restraint in Caleb's tone, a careful distance that said, "We heard you. We just don't know what to do with you now." It wasn't open hostility, just discomfort. And honestly, that was fine with me. I wasn't looking for redemption. I wasn't hoping they'd rush in with apologies or tears. I just needed truth. And now I had it. 3 weeks later, Caleb invited everyone to a formal dinner. A family celebration, he said. He'd landed a funding deal for his startup, a major investor, someone from the East Coast, and he wanted to share the good news. Nothing big, he claimed, just a private chef, a few speeches, and some close friends. I didn't want to go, but I knew I had to. Not out of obligation, not to support him, but because sometimes you need to see the structure one last time before you walk out of it forever. The night of the dinner, I wore a slate gray dress, the one I saved for rare events where I had to blend in but still look like I belonged. I arrived 10 minutes early. The backyard had been transformed. Twinkle lights, an archway of flowers, classical music playing softly from hidden speakers, round tables with menus printed in gold ink. It looked more like a wedding than a business event. And there at the center of it all was Caleb, smiling, laughing, hand on Dad's shoulder, arm around Mom. I took a seat near the back, unnoticed, at least at first. Halfway through the evening, the speeches began. Caleb's business partner toasted him first, praising his leadership, his vision, his family support. Then Caleb stood up, and for 7 straight minutes he told a story that almost felt familiar. He talked about the house, about growing up in a tight-knit family that always had his back, about overcoming hardship after Dad's surgeries and stepping in to carry the weight when things got tough. He didn't mention me, not once. He didn't say I helped pay the bills or manage their lives for 5 years. He didn't even say I was there. And then the line that settled deep in my chest like cold iron. This house has always been a symbol of resilience, and it's where I learned to lead. From my parents who never gave up and who taught me what commitment really means. The crowd clapped. Mom dabbed her eyes. Dad smiled proudly. And I sat frozen, not with anger, not even with hurt, with understanding. Complete, hollow, peaceful understanding. This wasn't about forgetting. It was about erasure. A deliberate rewriting of history, not cruel, not personal, just convenient. And in that moment, I knew I was done. After the dinner, I didn't stick around for dessert. I left before anyone could ask me to stay, or worse, pretend they hadn't seen me all night. I drove to the edge of the city, to a small motel where I'd already reserved a room. Not because I'd been kicked out, but because I'd finally decided to leave on my own terms. That room, tiny, bland, quiet, felt more like home than the one I'd been in for years. I slept through the night for the first time in months. The next morning, I started putting things in motion. I met with Erica again this time, not just to ask questions, but to draw boundaries. We prepared a letter, a formal notice that I would no longer be contributing financially, and that I expected a clear accounting of my past contributions for the sake of closure. Not legal action, just dignity. She also helped me begin the process of applying for a rental, a modest apartment near a small bookstore I used to love. It wasn't much, but it would be mine. Entirely finally mine. Back at the house, the silence stretched. Mom didn't call. Caleb didn't text. Dad, to his credit, sent a short message. "Hope you're well. Let me know if you need anything." I appreciated that, even if I didn't reply. I needed distance, not vengeance. 2 days later, I returned briefly to pack the last of my things. No one was home. I walked through each room slowly. The kitchen, where I made countless meals. The hallway, where I kept the calendar of everyone's doctor visits. The living room, where I once dozed off on the couch after pulling an all-nighter on tax prep. I touched the frame of the family photo by the stairs. The one taken last year. I wasn't in it. They'd taken it while I was at work. Caleb had posted it with the caption, "The ones who always believed in me." I stared at it for a long moment, then turned it face down, not in anger, in closure. As I left a letter on the kitchen counter. Just a few lines. "Thank you for what you did give me, even if it wasn't everything I needed. I'll be okay. I hope you will too. E." I locked the door behind me, dropped the key in the mailbox, and walked to my car without looking back. That evening, as I sat in my new apartment surrounded by unopened boxes, I received a message from Mom. It read, "I saw your letter. I don't know what to say. It hurts to realize we made you feel this way. I hope one day you'll forgive us. Mom." I didn't respond. Not out of spite, out of healing. Some conversations don't need words. They need time, and space, and silence. 2 weeks into my new life, I'd just started to feel normal again. The silence of my small apartment didn't feel lonely. It felt earned. There were no footsteps above my head, no lists of errands to run, no second-guessing my presence in a space I paid to occupy. It was simple, it was quiet, and it was mine. Then on a Wednesday afternoon he showed up. I was on my way back from the grocery store when I saw him standing outside my building like he belonged there. Caleb. Same cologne, same expensive coat, same calm confidence that once made him magnetic and now just felt hollow. He smiled like nothing had happened. "Hey, sis." I didn't return the smile. "What are you doing here?" I was hoping we could talk. He followed me up without asking, and I let him. Not because I wanted to, but because part of me needed to know what he would say, what he thought still tethered us. He stood awkwardly in my small living room, eyes scanning the thrifted couch, the wall calendar, the neatly stacked grocery bags. "You've really got your own thing going here," he said. I didn't respond. He cleared his throat. "So, I need a favor." Of course he did. He explained it like it was no big deal. His investor had pulled back, cash flow was tight. The business just needed a small bridge. And since I knew the family's finances, and had always been so organized, he thought I could help secure a temporary line of credit in my name just for a few months. I stared at him. No apology, no mention of what had happened. No recognition that I'd walked away because of the very patterns he was now repeating. He was asking me to walk back into the fire and hold the match for him. I waited until he stopped talking, then said calmly, "No." His smile faltered. "What do you mean, no? I mean, I'm not doing that. It's not like I'm asking for money, just your signature. Your credit score is way better than mine, and—" "Why do you think that is?" I interrupted. He blinked. "I've never borrowed more than I could repay. I've never put someone else in financial risk for my ambition. I didn't get that score by accident." He shifted in place, irritated now. "Come on, Evelyn, don't act like this is personal." "But it is," I said softly. "Everything about this is personal." There was a long pause. Then he did something I didn't expect. He laughed. A short, dry sound. "Wow, you really think you're better than us now?" I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "I just finally believe I deserve better." He picked up his coat. "That's rich," he muttered. "You wouldn't have lasted a month in that house if I hadn't handled the hard stuff." I looked at him steady. "You mean the paperwork you used to remove me from the trust, or the refinancing you never told me about?" His jaw tensed. I stepped closer. "You erased me, Caleb, not by accident. You made choices. You reshaped the narrative. And now that it's falling apart, you've come back expecting me to hold it up again." He opened his mouth, then closed it, and walked out without another word. I thought that would be the end of it, but 2 days later it got worse. A mutual acquaintance, an old friend of the family, Mrs. Landry, messaged me. "Hi, Evelyn. I'm so sorry to ask, but I just wanted to check something. Caleb told us you're managing the family trust again. He said you're backing the next phase of his company, that you two are stronger than ever now. I'm thrilled if it's true, but I just wanted to hear it from you directly." I stared at the screen in disbelief, not just because of the lie, but because he was already selling it, already rewriting the story again with himself at the center, and me as the supporting character I never agreed to play. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I forwarded the message to Erica. She replied in under 30 minutes. "We need to make a public clarification, carefully, fact-based, without drama. I'll draft something." I took a deep breath. I didn't want to escalate, but I wasn't going to let the lie stand. Not this time. The next day, a short and formal statement went out to a few mutual friends and professional contacts, carefully worded, respectful but clear. Evelyn Tran is not involved in any financial decisions related to the Tran Family Trust or any affiliated business entities. She is currently focused on personal projects and living independently. No accusations. No bitterness. Just truth. And that was enough. Because within 24 hours, the calls started. Apparently, Caleb had been courting several community sponsors for a partnership event. And those sponsors had assumed I was backing him because that's what he told them. Once they heard otherwise, 3 pulled out. A 4th called me directly and said I knew something felt off. "Thank you for clarifying." Later that night, I got a text from Caleb. Just one line. "Are you trying to destroy me?" I stared at it for a while, then turned off my phone. Not in cruelty. In peace. Because I wasn't trying to destroy anyone. I was finally simply refusing to let them destroy me. 3 days later, Mom called. Her voice was quiet, hesitant. "Your brother is in a bad place right now." "I know," I said. "And I hope he finds his way." She paused. "Can't you just help him one last time?" I breathed in, held it, let it out slowly. "No, Mom, I can't." There was silence on the line. Then okay, not agreement, not understanding, just acknowledgement. And it was enough. That weekend, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and my favorite old book. I didn't check my phone. Didn't chase clarity from people who never offered it willingly. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, I wasn't waiting for someone to fix it, or feel sorry or say the perfect thing. I was done seeking approval in places that had already shut the door. And that wasn't bitterness. It was freedom. Autumn arrived in quiet shades of amber. Leaves curled along my balcony. The mornings grew cooler. The light in my apartment turned softer. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the next disaster to land. I had carved out something small but strong a life that didn't revolve around proving my worth to people who couldn't see it. A rhythm that didn't include constant correction, emotional detours, or pretending I wasn't hurt when I was. I had peace, which is probably why the letter hit harder than I expected. It arrived in a plain envelope, no return address. I almost tossed it aside, assuming it was junk mail, but something made me pause. The handwriting on the front, neat, deliberate, was familiar. I opened it slowly. Inside was a folded page of thick paper. No greeting, no closing. Just a note written in the kind of careful script someone uses when they're trying not to press too hard. I've been thinking about what you said, about how we erased you. I don't know if it was intentional. I don't know if I even knew I was doing it. But I believe you. And I see it now the way we let you carry things, then blamed you for holding them too tightly. I'm sorry. Not because I want something, just because you deserve to hear it. Caleb. I sat with the letter for a long time, not reading it again, just letting it sit in my lap like something too delicate to touch twice. The part of me that had once longed for those words, starved for them, should have leapt with relief. But instead, I felt still, like when a storm passes and all that's left is damp ground and silence. No wind, no thunder, just the knowing. I didn't write back. Not because I hadn't forgiven him, but because I finally understood forgiveness doesn't always require an open door. Sometimes it's enough to simply lay the weight down and walk forward lighter, quieter, more whole. Weeks passed. I settled into a new project, volunteering part-time at a community resource center. Mostly administrative work, some counseling, nothing flashy. But it felt right. People came in with heavy stories, some of them messier than mine, some of them frighteningly similar. And when I listened, really listened, I saw something clear. We all just wanted someone to say, I believe you. You're not crazy. What happened wasn't okay and you didn't imagine it. So I said it. Again and again. Quietly. Steadily. And in helping others reclaim their voices, I realized mine had never really been lost. Just buried. One afternoon, I ran into an old neighbor, Mrs. Landry, the one who'd messaged me weeks ago. She was walking her dog outside the cafe where I'd stopped for tea. She greeted me with a smile, then said, You look different. Better or worse, I asked, teasing gently. She chuckled. Better. Like someone who finally stopped waiting for permission. I smiled. She looked down at her dog, then back at me. People always think the loudest ones have all the power. But sometimes the quietest exit leaves the deepest impact. I didn't say anything. But I held those words all day. That night, I opened the small wooden box on my dresser, the one where I kept letters, keepsakes, fragments of a life I used to cling to. Inside was the photo Caleb had cropped me out of. I'd found the original on an old USB drive while unpacking. In the uncropped version, I was standing slightly off-center, holding a plate mid-laugh, not posed, not polished, but there, present, real. And that's how I chose to remember myself, not erased, not an afterthought, but undeniable. A few days later, I received another envelope, this one from a law office. I opened it cautiously. Inside was a formal document notification of an update to the family trust. It listed Caleb as co-trustee. It listed Mom and Dad. And for the first time in years, it listed me. Not just as a footnote, but as an equal. Attached was a handwritten note from my father. We were wrong. You should have always been part of this, not just in effort, but in name. We can't undo what we missed. But we see it now. Thank you for not turning away when we didn't deserve your steadiness. Dad, I didn't cry. Not then. I just placed the note beside Caleb's letter and realized something that surprised me. The apology wasn't what made me feel whole. It was the fact that I'd already healed before it arrived, that I no longer needed the apology to define me. I had stepped out of the house, out of the story they wrote without me, and I had written my own. That was enough. A month later, I hosted a small gathering in my apartment. Not a celebration, not a statement, just dinner. I invited 2 colleagues, Mrs. Landry and a young woman from the shelter, who had finally found stable housing. We ate, laughed, listened to music that wasn't nostalgic, just comforting. And when someone offered to do the dishes, I let them, because I wasn't the fixer anymore. I was allowed to receive, to rest, to belong, not because I'd earned it by enduring, but because I existed. And that was enough too. Somewhere in another life, Caleb is still chasing something. Maybe he's changed. Maybe he hasn't. That's not my concern anymore, because my peace isn't tied to his character arc. My worth isn't defined by a document, a dinner speech, or a family that took too long to look up and see who was really standing beside them. I was there. I showed up. And when they stopped seeing me, I learned to see myself. That's the story, not the pain, not the drama, the decision, the turning, the quiet reclaiming. Before bed that night, I lit a small candle and placed it by the window. Not for anyone, just for the girl I used to be, the one who stayed too long, who gave too much, who finally walked away, not out of bitterness, but because she realized she didn't need to be chosen to belong. She'd already chosen herself.